Let's bring in our legal analyst guests, Lee Hutton and Eric Schwartzreich, on the program this morning. Eric, let me start with you, please. And when we think about defense work, that's what you do. You practice criminal defense work in Florida. Your thoughts on Dr. Andrew Clark? Would you want him as your case witness?
So I think he comes across very well. When expert witnesses testify, that's usually when the jury is asleep. They can be boring. They can speak in language that's not understood. He's clear. He's concise. He has an uphill battle. He discussed this McNaughton test. Did Carly appreciate the consequences of her actions? The defense has a leg to stand on because this is not manufactured, right? He did an evaluation. He reviewed records that were supplied. Later, we find out that she was diagnosed with bipolar. It's also genetic mental health can be. Her biological father suffered from bipolar as well. That journal that was referenced, although we didn't see it in the clip, has comments where she was crying out for help. When you look at this child, because she's a child, she looks normal. The problem for the defense is she hit a camera. She called a friend to come over to the house. She said, "Do you want to see a dead body?" She said, "I'm going to put 3 more bullets in my stepfather." She ran, she fled. All of those actions to a layperson, to these jurors, they got to say, well, she has to understand what she's doing because she's trying to cover this up. She seems to understand, and I just think it's a difficult pill to swallow. There's certainly something to work with here because she's a child. There's sympathy. It's there. But if you really look at the actions, her actions are really difficult to show that this person, this child, didn't understand that she shot her mother to death and tried to kill her stepfather.
Yeah, great points. Eric, thank you for all of that. Lee Hutton, to you next, please. Your thoughts on this expert witness and how much weight the jury might give his testimony.
Well, the weight of the testimony the jury is going to give is going to be appropriate. I think the expert witness came off as a seasoned expert, and I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. He was confident in his conclusion. He stayed within his lane as an expert, not going too far to the left or to the right. And I agree with everything that Eric said. But is it enough to tip the scales of justice, as you stated earlier? I'm not sure if it was, because while you weigh the credibility in the explanation of the expert, there's a lot of visuals that I see. Now, here's where I'm emerged some of my entertainment law into my criminal defense practice. The first thing that I saw in the earlier video was this Nirvana shirt. Now, if there's any music fans out there, they know Nirvana was diagnosed with bipolar and had some issues. And, there were so many other things that seemed very unusually scripted and calculated. And earlier testimony came out that here's a very smart individual, very smart girl. She even was so smart she was able to skip a grade. Are these things that were so calculated as communications cues that a juror is going to say, well, let's pause, let's wait a minute. I understand what the expert says, but she called her friend over. She has a Nirvana shirt. She doesn't appear, she appears to be a little bit more calculated in these activities, and to blame it on some type of mental distress, I'm not sure if that's going to fly the day. The defense still has a lot of work to do.
Lee Hutton, I love what you picked up on there. Never thought of that, but the connection you just made, brilliant. Brilliant. Her defense team should be all over that, to say, and in close, look at her shirt. Kurt Cobain, the late, great Kurt Cobain, suffered from bipolar disorder. And you just mentioned that, and that's what we know that Dr. Andrew Clark said was going on with Carly Gregg at the time, that she's suffering from bipolar disorder and not properly being, treated and medicated, I guess, the switch in medications, all these different factors contributing. Oh, I love it. Eric, let me go back to you on that. You were nodding along as Lee was making that connection. Your thoughts, what would you do with that in close? Would you bring up that shirt?
Well, I think Lee's point is excellent, right? I mean, she is wearing a Nirvana shirt. I mean, she's a child. So, I mean, there's 2 sides to every coin, especially as a lawyer. Prosecution can say, well, this is calculated. This is the child that tried to run. This is the child that took a camera and hid it in a refrigerator, and that this is just part of a facade. The defense can say this is who she identifies with. I mean, Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, someone that has mental health issues. So you can run with it, but you have to be careful because for every argument, there's a counter argument. I think Lee's point is an excellent point. I think it's an astute and excellent observation. And she is wearing the Nirvana shirt. I mean, or is she just a regular teenager? I mean, the problem is these acts are so heinous. And when you look at this child, I mean, she's acting normal. And did she appreciate the consequences of her action at the time? They have a leg to stand on. I think it's a tough sell. I don't think it's impossible. As defense lawyers, you got to believe, you got to manifest it. I don't think they're like coming out of thin air here with this defense. They have nothing else, but it's a dangerous defense when you use sanity because you're admitting to the facts. You have to cooperate with the prosecution. It's going to be a battle of the experts. The prosecution expert's going to come on there. And while we didn't see that clip, and if I'm talking too much, I apologize, but the cross-examination, which I watched, was really brutal because, you know, the state methodically asked the questions, and I'm paraphrasing. When she called her friend, did she not appreciate the consequence of the actions? When she took the camera, put in the fridge, did she not appreciate the consequence of the actions? She did a lot that shows that she was trying to cover something up that she was perhaps saying and understood everything. And that's the difficulty, at least for me.
Right, right, Eric. I'm with you there. She knew how many rounds were in that revolver. She said, I got 3 from my mom and 3 from my stepdad. The fact that she had the wherewithal to hide that revolver behind her back when she's in front of the camera. Twice we saw her do it. So yes, point well taken. This is a tricky case. Excellent analysis from you both. Eric Schwartzreich, Lee Hutton, stand by kindly, please. We're getting word there's a little movement.